My name's Matt, and my wife Lauren and I have been together for a little over 9 years now. We met in one of those completely random, movie-like ways at a bookstore downtown. I was wandering through the fiction section, juggling way too many books in my arms, when I accidentally bumped into her. She was carrying a coffee, which, of course, went flying all over both of us. I was mortified, apologizing 100 times over, but Lauren just laughed, this big, carefree laugh that made the whole situation feel lighter immediately. We ended up talking right there between the shelves for almost an hour. I offered to buy her a new coffee, and she countered by suggesting we grab dinner instead. That was Lauren, confident, quick on her feet, never one to waste time. After that first night, we were pretty much inseparable. There wasn't any weird dance of pretending not to care, we just clicked. Within 6 months, we were living together in a small but cozy apartment not too far from where we first met. 2 years later, we had a simple wedding surrounded by friends and family. It wasn't some grand event, but it was perfect for us. Today, we live in a nice house just outside the city. It's a 3-bedroom place with a big backyard and enough space for all the little hobbies we've picked up over the years. Lauren has her painting nook in the sunroom, and I set up a small home office for when I need to work remotely. We've got a golden retriever named Milo, who honestly runs the house more than either of us does. Life with Lauren has always felt easy, like breathing. We have our little routines, Sunday morning coffee runs, Friday night takeout and movie marathons, lazy afternoons spent gardening or walking Milo through the park. There's a rhythm to our days that feels comfortable, familiar. She's my best friend, my partner in crime, the person I always want to come home to. At least, that's the life we've built together. When I think about the life Lauren and I have built, it's not just about the house or the routines. It's about all the small moments that have stitched themselves together into something bigger. Lauren has this way of making even the most ordinary days feel special. Saturday mornings are usually my favorite. We'll wake up late, make a big breakfast together. She's the pancake expert. I handle the bacon, and spend the morning lounging in the backyard if the weather's good. Milo will be sprawled out in the sun, and we'll sip our coffee slowly, talking about everything and nothing at all. We both work full-time, but our schedules mesh well enough that we get to spend plenty of time together. I work from home 3 days a week, and Lauren's job gives her a lot of flexibility too. Sometimes she'll swing by the house in the middle of the day just to grab lunch with me or take Milo for a quick walk. Little things like that, they mean more to me than I probably say out loud. Travel's always been a big part of our life too. Every year we pick one new place to explore, nothing extravagant, just a new city or a national park we haven't seen before. Lauren's the planner when it comes to trips. She's got this giant folder where she keeps itineraries, restaurant ideas, places to visit. Meanwhile, I'm more the show-up and wing-it type, but somehow it works. It always has. At home, our evenings are usually pretty low-key. We'll cook dinner together, maybe sit outside if it's nice out, or just crash on the couch and binge a new show. Lauren's always finding some offbeat series for us to get into. Half the time I roll my eyes at her picks, but then 3 episodes later, I'm hooked too. I guess what I'm trying to say is, life with her feels settled. Not in a boring way, in the kind of way where you look around and realize, yeah, this is what I pictured when I thought about a future with someone. There's a lot of laughter, a lot of shared glances over inside jokes, a lot of ordinary days that don't feel ordinary when you're living them with the right person. And for a long time, that was enough for me. It really was. One of the best parts about being with Lauren has always been how natural everything feels. We never had to force anything, conversation, plans, even the tough decisions. It's like we were always reading from the same playbook without even realizing it. We never rushed into anything we weren't ready for. When we first talked about buying a house, it wasn't some big, sit-down, serious conversation. It was one evening after dinner, both of us stretched out on the living room floor, Milo nudging at our hands for attention. I mentioned how cramped the apartment was getting, and she just grinned and said, "Then let's find somewhere bigger." That was it, decided right there, no drama. A few months later, we found our house. Lauren's always had a talent for making any space feel like home. Within the first week, she had strung up fairy lights on the patio, filled the kitchen with plants, and started transforming the spare bedroom into a painting studio. I spent weekends setting up a little workshop in the garage. We had this shared dream of slowly fixing the place up together, one project at a time, repainting walls, building bookshelves, gardening. It was messy and chaotic and a lot of trips to Home Depot, but it made the house feel like ours. Socially, we were a pretty balanced couple. Lauren had her circle of close friends from college and work, and I had my buddies from back when I first started my career. We'd host casual get-togethers sometimes, BBQs in the backyard, game nights, nothing fancy. Lauren's the kind of person who can make a stranger feel like an old friend in about 5 minutes flat, so our home was usually full of laughter and life. It wasn't all big moments either. Some of my favorite memories are the small ones, like Sunday evenings, curled up on the couch under one blanket, half watching TV while Milo snored at our feet. Or weekday mornings when she'd make coffee before heading to work and leave mine sitting by my laptop with a sticky note that just said, "Red Heart You." Everything about life with Lauren felt steady and warm, like a fire that never needed much tending because it just kept burning on its own. I thought we had built something strong, something that would stand the test of time. Looking back now, I realize how much I believed in that life, how much I trusted that we were exactly where we were supposed to be. Looking back, I think the first crack showed itself on what should have been just another normal night. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursday was our lazy dinner night, meaning we'd usually throw together something easy like pasta or order a pizza, no expectations. Lauren had picked up sushi on her way home, and we were eating at the kitchen island, chatting about our days like usual. Then, completely out of nowhere, she put down her chopsticks, looked at me a little too seriously, and said, "Have you ever thought about an open relationship?" At first, I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. Lauren had a weird sense of humor sometimes, and I figured this was just another one of her curveballs. But when I saw the way she was watching me, not smiling, not blinking, my stomach sank. She wasn't joking. I asked her, carefully, what she meant. She shrugged, almost too casually. "I mean, we've been together a long time, Matt. It's natural to wonder what else is out there, right? I'm not saying I don't love you. I do. But maybe we could explore a little. Just physical. No feelings involved. It might even make us stronger." I just sat there, frozen, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. I didn't even know what to say at first. It was so far out of left field. We had never talked about anything like this before. I thought we were solid. I felt solid. After a minute, I put my food down and told her no. Not angrily. Not accusingly. Just, no. I told her that I loved her. That I wasn't interested in being with anyone else. That, honestly, I didn't even like the idea of sharing what we had. It wasn't a judgment on other people's relationships, it just wasn't us. Lauren didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully, like she was filing the conversation away somewhere deep in her mind. Then she smiled a tight, fake kind of smile, and said, "Okay, I get it." Forget I asked. We finished dinner, watched a little TV, went to bed like normal. But things didn't feel normal after that. Not even close. She started spending a little more time working late. Started being a little more glued to her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Started acting different. And even though I told myself it was probably just my imagination, that maybe things were just a little weird because of the awkward conversation, there was a feeling in my gut I couldn't shake. Something had shifted. Something important. At first, I kept telling myself it was nothing. That maybe I was just being paranoid because of the conversation about the open relationship. That I was reading too much into things. Overthinking. But as the days turned into weeks, it became harder to ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. Lauren's schedule started shifting in ways that didn't make a lot of sense. She was always busy. Work meetings. Late-night projects. New friends from the gym she needed to catch up with. She started coming home later, brushing off questions with a casual wave of her hand. "Just work stuff," she'd say. Or, "Just grabbing a drink with some of the girls." Always with that same easy smile, the one that used to feel real but now seemed a little practiced. Milo noticed it too, in his own way. He used to go crazy when Lauren walked through the door, barking, tail wagging, circling her feet. Lately, he barely lifted his head from the couch when she came home. I don't know. Maybe he felt it before I did. The weird thing is, Lauren didn't seem unhappy. If anything, she was bubblier than usual, like she was in a permanently good mood. She laughed a little too easily. Smiled a little too brightly. It wasn't like her. Lauren was always warm, but not giddy. Sometimes, when we sat down for dinner, I'd catch her smiling at her phone, typing quickly, then flipping it over when I looked at her. She'd giggle quietly at something she wouldn't share. If I asked, she'd just say, "It's nothing, just a group chat." Boring stuff. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in my chest felt heavy, like a weight that just wouldn't go away. I started noticing small changes too. New underwear she hadn't worn before. Subtle, but not the kind of thing you miss after nearly a decade together. A new perfume sharper, sweeter than the scent she always used to wear. Little things. Things that didn't scream anything by themselves, but stacked together, started painting a picture I wasn't ready to look at. I told myself it was nothing. That relationships go through phases. That maybe she was just rediscovering herself, trying to feel young again, trying to shake off the monotony of everyday life. I told myself it was all in my head. But late at night, lying awake next to her, listening to the soft hum of her breathing, the doubts would creep back in. And the worst part? I didn't even know what I was doubting exactly. I just knew that something was slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to hold on to it. There's this strange thing that happens when you start doubting someone you love. You don't want to believe your gut. You look for reasons to excuse every odd thing, every flicker of strangeness, just so you can keep holding on to the picture you built together. That's what I was doing. Trying to make excuses for the growing distance between Lauren and me. We still did the normal things, dinner together a few nights a week, weekend walks with Milo, but there was a new kind of space between us. A hollow, invisible wall I couldn't seem to break through. Conversations started feeling shallow, like she was somewhere else even when she was right in front of me. I'd ask about her day and she'd smile and say, busy, without any real detail. If I asked about the new friends she was always mentioning, she'd change the subject or say, you wouldn't know them. And yet, she seemed energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. She started dressing differently, not dramatically, just sharper. A little more effort. Tighter jeans. New tops that showed more than she usually liked to. It wasn't anything crazy. Maybe not even something another man would notice right away. But after being married to someone for nearly a decade, you learn to spot the small shifts. Sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her checking herself out in the mirror before leaving the house. Adjusting her hair. Applying an extra coat of lipstick she hadn't bothered with before. It shouldn't have meant anything. I kept telling myself that. People grow, people change, especially after long stretches together. Right? But when I'd pull her close at night, she felt distant. She used to melt into me when I wrapped my arms around her. Now, sometimes, she'd pull away after a few minutes, mumbling something about being too hot or too tired. Always too tired. A few times, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find the bed beside me empty. I'd get up, bleary-eyed, and find her downstairs in the dark, sitting on the couch, scrolling on her phone. She'd smile and say she couldn't sleep and not to worry. I tried not to worry. God, I tried. Maybe it was the way she laughed a little too hard at texts she wouldn't show me. Maybe it was the sudden gym sessions she insisted were just for stress relief, even though she'd never cared much about working out before. Maybe it was the growing feeling that she wasn't mine in the same way anymore. Nothing I could point to directly. Nothing I could prove. Just a slow, gnawing erosion of the life we had built, like watching the tide pull the sand from under your feet, grain by grain, without ever realizing how fast it's going until you're standing in nothing at all. And yet, I still clung to hope, because admitting there was more to it. That would mean admitting that maybe, just maybe, the life I thought we shared wasn't real anymore. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I don't know exactly when the feeling tipped from uneasy into unbearable. Maybe it was the third night in a week that Lauren came home after midnight, smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine. Maybe it was the way she started locking her phone when she never had before. Maybe it was the way she smiled sometimes, this small, private smile, while looking off into the distance like she was somewhere I couldn't follow. Whatever it was, it built up inside me until it was a pressure I couldn't contain anymore. I told myself I wasn't crazy. I needed to know. And that's how I found myself doing something I once swore I'd never do, installing a hidden camera in our bedroom. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't something I did lightly. I wrestled with it for days, pacing the house when Lauren wasn't home, second-guessing every move. I thought about how much trust we had once shared, how deep it used to run. Setting up a camera felt like crossing some kind of invisible line, a line I hated even having to consider. But at the end of the day, it was the not knowing that was killing me more than anything. The creeping uncertainty had become a shadow over everything we once had. I needed answers, one way or another. I ordered the camera online, a tiny, almost invisible thing disguised as a smoke detector. When it arrived, my hands shook as I opened the package. I waited until Lauren was at the gym one evening and climbed up on a chair in the corner of the room, pretending to dust the ceiling fan just in case any neighbor happened to see me through the window. I tucked the camera up high, angled toward the room but not obviously pointed at anything in particular. A careful balance, enough to catch what I needed to see without making it obvious I was watching. After it was installed, I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time, staring at it. Milo patted over and rested his head against my knee, his brown eyes watching me quietly, like he knew I was caught in something heavy and inescapable. I scratched behind his ears absently, feeling the weight of what I'd just done pressing down on my shoulders. I told myself that maybe I wouldn't even need it. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd spend weeks watching nothing but Lauren brushing her hair or folding laundry or falling asleep with a book on her chest. Maybe this would be my proof that I was being ridiculous. But deep down, even as I tried to believe that, a darker part of me was already bracing for the worst. I didn't check the footage immediately. Part of me didn't want to see. Part of me was still clinging to the fraying hope that there would be nothing there at all. That this was all just a stupid mistake, a side effect of too much stress and too little communication. That somehow, Lauren and I would wake up one morning and all this distance between us would have been just a bad dream. But even as I told myself those things, even as I clung to them like a man clinging to driftwood in a rising sea, I could feel something cold and certain settling deep in my chest. Something was coming, and whether I was ready for it or not, I knew it was about to change everything. I don't think there's a right way to prepare yourself for the moment your whole life tilts sideways. Even when you know it's coming. Even when every instinct inside you is screaming that something is wrong. It was a Saturday afternoon when I finally gathered enough nerve to check the footage. Lauren had gone out, said she was meeting a few friends for a late lunch. The house was quiet except for Milo, snoring gently by the door, and the soft hum of the ceiling fan overhead. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, fingers trembling slightly as I pulled up the file. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the usual, Lauren folding clothes, putting away laundry, moving through the bedroom like it was just another ordinary day. I almost laughed, out of sheer relief and nerves. Maybe I really had gone off the deep end. Maybe. But then, around 7:30 p.m., the front door opened. Lauren walked in, and she wasn't alone. A man followed her inside. Tall, athletic build, short hair. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't anyone from her work events, no one from our neighborhood that I could place. He walked in like he'd been there before, familiar with the space. Comfortable. They didn't talk much. Lauren set her purse down on the dresser, kicked off her shoes, and turned to him with a smile that twisted my stomach into knots. She kissed him. Just like that, no hesitation, no guilt in her eyes. A kiss that was deep, slow, practiced. I watched, frozen, as they moved toward the bed, laughing quietly, tugging at each other's clothes, leaving a trail across the floor. Lauren's blouse, his jacket, her jeans, his belt. Like it was a routine they knew by heart. Like it wasn't the first time. They didn't even bother dimming the lights. They didn't close the curtains. They didn't act like they were doing something wrong. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the air had been punched out of my lungs. It was surreal, like watching someone else's life implode in front of me. Like some cruel documentary that just happened to have my bedroom, my sheets, my wife in it. The worst part? The sound. The laughter. The soft, familiar moans that once had been meant only for me. I slammed the laptop shut, heart hammering against my ribs, stomach churning. For a moment, I thought I was going to be sick. I stumbled to the sink, gripping the counter until the world stopped spinning. There it was. No more doubts. No more guessing games. No more giving her the benefit of the doubt because I loved her. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. And now, for the first time in months, I wasn't confused anymore. I was furious. A cold, heavy fury that settled into my bones and whispered, "You can't let this slide." I didn't sleep after I watched that footage. I didn't move much, either. Just sat there in the kitchen, hunched over the table, feeling like a ghost trapped inside a life that wasn't his anymore. It wasn't the heartbreak that kept me rooted to that chair. It wasn't even the anger. It was the simple, devastating finality of it all, the understanding that nothing I could do or say would ever undo what had been broken. Lauren wasn't the woman I thought I had built a life with. She hadn't been for a long time. I sat there until the first pale morning light crept across the tiles, until the house started to feel unfamiliar and cold, until my heartbeat slowed into something almost mechanical. And somewhere between that long, endless stretch of hours, a plan started to take shape in my mind. Not out of rage, not out of spite, out of a need for closure. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for answers she clearly didn't have. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I was going to end this my way. By midday, I had made the arrangements. I reached out to someone I trusted, someone from my life long before Lauren had ever been in it. An old friend, one who had once quietly confessed feelings we'd both buried out of loyalty to the lives we were living at the time. She didn't ask for details when I called. She just said, "Come over." That evening, under the dim light of a small rented hotel room, we crossed lines that once seemed impossible. It wasn't messy or reckless. It wasn't about passion or revenge sex the way some people might imagine. It was quiet, almost solemn, a meeting of two broken people understanding exactly what the other needed. And when it was done, I did what I had come there to do. I made sure it was recorded, clean, undeniable, unvarnished. The proof I needed. The final piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve in the first place. The next morning, while Lauren was at work, I moved through the house like a man dismantling a bomb. Calm, careful, deliberate. I packed only what mattered: a bag of clothes, my laptop, Milo's food, and leash. Everything else, the furniture we picked out together, the photos we had framed, the silly knickknacks we collected on vacations, all of it could stay. I didn't want reminders. I didn't want memories. I printed 2 copies of the videos, sealed each one in a plain white envelope, and placed them side by side on the kitchen table beneath her favorite mug, the one she had insisted we buy at some overpriced shop on a trip to Asheville. Beside them, on a single sheet of notebook paper, I wrote 4 words in thick black marker. "I know everything." I didn't add my name. I didn't need to. She would know exactly who left it behind. When everything was ready, I clipped Milo's leash onto his collar, gave him a reassuring pat, and walked out the front door without looking back. I didn't slam it. I didn't hesitate. I locked it behind me for the last time, slid the key through the mail slot, and walked away into the warm, heavy afternoon without so much as a glance at the life I was leaving behind. She called. Of course she called. Dozens of times that night. Missed calls, voicemails, frantic texts that popped up one after another like a slot machine spinning out endless losing numbers. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen. I just blocked her, one by one, until there was nothing left of her on my phone, nothing left tying her to me in any way that mattered. I didn't need to hear her cry, or scream, or spin lies about how it wasn't what it looked like. I had seen enough. I had lived enough. There was nothing left to say. Starting over wasn't like flipping a switch. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was slow, awkward, and at times, painfully lonely. The first few weeks after I left were some of the hardest of my life. Every day felt like walking through a burned-out city I used to call home. I stayed with an old college buddy at first, crashing on his couch, Milo curled up at my feet like he was the only anchor I had left. I didn't talk much those first days. I worked when I could. I ate when I remembered. Mostly, I just tried to breathe. It's strange how silence can feel so loud when you're finally free from a toxic life you didn't even realize was choking you. But somewhere in that silence, in all that empty space where my old life used to be, I started to find little pieces of myself again. It started with the small things. Going to a new coffee shop where nobody knew me. Finding a new walking trail for Milo and me to explore. Spending a whole afternoon reading at the park, feeling the sun on my face without the weight of wondering where Lauren was, what lies were unraveling behind my back. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks or some grand revelation. It felt like breathing deeply for the first time in years. A few months after I left, I signed a lease on a small but bright apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a tiny balcony, hardwood floors that creaked when Milo trotted across them. But it was mine. Every corner, every scratch on the doorframe, every sunbeam pooling across the kitchen counter, it was all mine. No ghosts. No lies woven into the foundation. Just a clean slate. I wasn't looking to meet anyone. Honestly, I didn't think I would even want to for a long time. But life has a way of surprising you when you're finally open to being surprised. I met Emma at the dog park, of all places. She had a mutt named Charlie who decided Milo was his new best friend from the second they laid eyes on each other. It started with small talk, laughing at the dogs chasing each other in endless circles, trading tips about the best walking spots in town. She had this way of listening that made you feel like what you were saying mattered, even if you were just rambling about leash brands or the weather. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking forward to those chance meetings more and more. Sometimes we'd sit on the benches long after our dogs had flopped down in the grass, talking about books, music, The weird little parts of life you never think to share with someone until they feel safe. There was no pressure, no expectations. Just two people with a little too much life behind them and a cautious hope for something better ahead. When I finally asked her out, stumbling over my words like a teenager, she smiled in this easy, kind way that told me she wasn't rushing, either. And when we had dinner, it didn't feel like trying to stitch myself back together. It felt like meeting someone who saw the cracks and didn't flinch. She didn't ask a lot of questions about my past. She just met me where I was, without judgment, without pity. I didn't have to be the guy who got cheated on. I could just be mad. I'm not going to say everything's perfect now. Healing isn't a straight line. Some nights I still wake up thinking I hear Lauren's voice in a dream, and I have to remind myself that chapter is closed. Some days the old anger creeps back and around the edges. But it doesn't own me anymore. It doesn't define who I am. I survived the worst day of my life. And somehow, standing here now, I realize I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm starting to live again. It's strange sitting here now, trying to put all of it into words. If you had told me a year ago that my marriage would be over, that I'd walk away from the life Lauren and I built without so much as a fight to save it, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have laughed. I would have called you crazy. Back then, I thought love was enough to protect what we had. I thought commitment meant safety. I thought loyalty was mutual, like gravity, something constant, something you never needed to question. I know better now. The truth is, love isn't armor. Love doesn't make someone immune to selfishness, to temptation, to cruelty wrapped up in smiles. You can pour everything you have into a person and still watch them toss it aside for something newer, cheaper, easier. And when that happens, when the floor gives out from under you, you have two choices. You either fall and stay there, or you get up and build something stronger on the ruins. I didn't know it back then, when I packed that bag and walked away, but leaving wasn't just about escaping Lauren. It was about saving myself. I don't hate her anymore. I did, for a while. God, did I. The kind of hate that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., playing scenes over and over in your head, imagining the perfect cutting line you never said. The kind of hate that tastes bitter every time her name crosses your mind. But that kind of hate eats you alive if you let it. It turns you into someone smaller, angrier, someone who carries the weight of what they didn't deserve. I realized after a lot of nights alone, after a lot of silent car rides and empty walks with Milo, that carrying that anger wasn't punishing her. It was punishing me. So I let it go. Piece by piece, day by day. I let go of the house, the dreams we once had, the future we once imagined. I let go of the idea that if I had just done something differently, worked less, talked more, listened harder, maybe it would have been enough. It wouldn't have. It never would have. The failure wasn't mine to own. And once I stopped trying to rewrite the story, once I accepted that I can't change people who don't want to be changed, I found something better than closure. I found freedom. Emma isn't a replacement for Lauren. She isn't a patch over old wounds. She's someone who met me where I was, scarred, cautious, still a little raw, and never once made me feel like I had to pretend to be whole. Some nights, when we sit together with our dogs at our feet and the sun setting through the windows, I catch myself smiling for no reason at all. Not because everything is perfect, not because the past doesn't still echo sometimes, but because I'm finally living in a life I chose, not one I clung to out of fear. If you're reading this and you're where I was, staring down the end of something you thought would last forever, I'm not going to tell you it gets better overnight. It doesn't. It's slow and messy, and some days it feels like dragging yourself uphill barefoot. But it does get better. You get better. You learn how strong you really are when you have no choice but to stand up and start over. You learn that losing someone who betrayed you isn't really a loss at all. It's the start of reclaiming everything they took from you. I don't regret leaving. I don't regret what I did to close that chapter. I only regret staying in a place where I wasn't truly seen for as long as I did. But that's behind me now. The future, my future, is wide open. And this time, I'm not looking back.